Welcome back to the In Chamber. I'm your host, Tom Schuman. Basketball's played an important role in Indiana's recovery from the pandemic. The state, of course, played host to the entire NCAA tournament. The high school hoop season was able to be played to its proper conclusion this year. While the Indiana Pacers are nearing the end of the 2021 regular season as we talk, and it's easy for me to say, but at the time of the release of this episode, the Indiana Fever had kicked off its campaign 4 days ago. And while we'll touch on the 25th season of the WNBA and the Fever's efforts on the court, we're going to focus more on the business side of the equation and some exciting opportunities for members of the organization. To do so, we welcome back a guest from our first season of the In Chamber. At that time, she was the leader of WGU Indiana. She assumed her current role in March 2019. Dr. Allison Barber, President and Chief Operating Officer of the Indiana Fever, welcome back to the In Chamber.
Thank you, Tom. Great to be here.
Well, we appreciate it. Allison, there are so many places we could start this conversation, but with the voices of athletes playing such a prominent part of the many discussions over the past years, I have to ask you about what was introduced recently as a really unique program called Athletes to Advocates. Give the listeners a little background on that, if you would.
Thanks, Tom. Over the last summer, we watched our athletes compete in what we called affectionately the Wubble. It was the bubble for the WNBA in Florida. And at the same time of our season, we had this, time in our country of social unrest, and our athletes came together and used their platform as professional elite athletes to say, what can we do to just raise the conversation and awareness around what isn't working in society and what we need to do to make it better. And I was so inspired by watching the determination and doggedness and focus of mission of our athletes, in addition to being on the court and competing for wins, that I thought maybe there's more we could do to help them and support them in what they really want to do. So I had the good fortune of meeting with the folks over at IU Lilly School of Philanthropy, and we were having a conversation, and I asked them if they would design a new curriculum for me to provide to our athletes. And I said, I define it this way, Tom. I think what we saw last summer were people who were amplifying a message. And that's so critical when you want to promote social change or good behavior. And, so an amplification of a message looks like wearing a logo on a t-shirt and tweeting and talking about things in social media. It's really important.
All right. So obviously there was that desire to amplify, and it sounds like your mission was how to make that even more effective.
That's right. So that's exactly it. So if you have people that are willing to amplify a message, then if you're in my role, what you really desire to do is help them become an advocate of the mission. So it's those two things are critically important for the success of society. People that will amplify the message, but people who will advocate for the mission. And so the School of Philanthropy designed this 5-week curriculum. It's a professional certificate, professor taught certificate. And we offered it as the pilot to the Indiana Fever. We're thrilled. Anthem, Gail Bordeaux, and folks at Anthem came alongside and funded that for us. And
how did it work, Allison? It's a 5-week program, and you had players and some front office people. The players were playing around the world, correct?
That's what was so inspiring to me, Tom. So our athletes weren't even part of the Fever. They weren't even on the team with us. This happened in off season. So they were competing for teams outside of the country. And Tamika worked, she was a real champion of this effort and worked with our athletes and said, we're going to offer this professional certificate. It's never been done before. It's a 5-week program. We're going to meet once a week for 3 hours with professors. And, do you want to do it? And immediately we hoped for like 3 or 4 players to pilot it. I think we got 6 or 7 players, and Tamika that raised their hand and said, absolutely. So from all different time zones, 1 day a week for 3 hours, the athletes came together and went through this program together. It was 5 weeks. And we're really proud of them for taking this initiative to develop this new competency of advocacy.
What's some of the feedback you received from the players, from Tamika, as they've talked about it? What have they said that how they plan to go forward with what they've been able to experience?
We've heard really great feedback in several ways. One, it was a really good experience for them to understand what is philanthropy and the role of philanthropy. And, candidly, some of them said, I thought you had to be a multimillionaire to be a philanthropist, so just that understanding of it's not just about what's in your checking account, it's about what's in your heart and your activities that can really make you a philanthropist. So just framing philanthropy for our athletes has been terrific. Then they had the opportunity to scope out what their actual area of passion is, and really worked out great for Tiffany Mitchell, one of our veterans. She's been in the league 6 years. Tiffany was in Israel at the time when she signed up to take the course. And she has just started, she has a passion for single parents. She was raised by a single mom. She started her own foundation called Spin Haven, and it is a support system for single parents. And she said going through this program really helped her frame the approach and learn additional skills as on how to run her own foundation. So we're hearing great feedback specifically around focus and design and goal setting around what's next. The average WNBA player, Tom, plays for 3.5 years. So our athletes compete, but they know there's another career after this professional athletic career. So this has been very helpful for them.
Allison, you mentioned early on, certainly over the past year, social justice has been part of the equation. That so many players from the WNBA were united and committed in their efforts, both last summer and since then. What are some of your reactions as you've seen that, as you've seen the players in the league kind of step forward and address some of these social justice issues?
I've been so impressed by the maturity of our athletes. You think about, many of these athletes are just either right out of college or 3 or 4 years out of college. And, you might be right to assume that a lot of people coming out of college are focused on different things than what can they do to change the narrative and the behavior of our society. So I was really impressed by their maturity and their passion. I respected their pursuit of trying to understand what their place is and how to use their platform. And, some got it exactly right. Some tried it again. I think it's not dissimilar than what maybe a lot of us are going through, of really revisiting what we believe are some of our beliefs and challenging the status quo in society. So, I applaud our athletes. They've taken it seriously and they continue. That's what's really inspiring. It wasn't just a thing.
Yeah,
an activity. They're still
the continuity, the longevity, the persistence, pick your term, but keeping the message out there has been very impressive.
Yes. I think about the women who fought for the women to have the right to vote. And, the history books say that those women fought for 50 years before they even got a piece of legislation considered. So, and then the right's only been there for 100 years. The point for me is there were people who were advocates for this mission for 50 years before they got a piece of legislation. That takes a lot of tenacity and stick-to-itiveness. That's what I see in our athletes, and it's very inspiring.
Allison, you mentioned this is a pilot program, the course, and I imagine you did not find too many other examples of athletes taking part in this. So, what's next? Do you see an expansion? Do you see it maybe other parts of the league or beyond the WNBA even?
I think it's the possibilities are endless. What we specifically designed with the School of Philanthropy and Anthem was the pilot, and we said if we figure out how to do this well, and we expected that we would, with Anthem and Lily, your odds are really good.
You got some good partners at the table.
we thought if we did this well and we get good feedback from our athletes, then there's a good chance it will scale. And that is exactly the conversation that the commissioner of the WNBA has had with us, is what would it look like now to take this program and offer it to all of the athletes at the WNBA. I've gotten phone calls from professional teams outside of basketball that would like this curriculum for their athletes too. So I think timing is everything. And these, when you design new pilots, this seems like the timing is just right for the passion of the athletes and the partnership with Lily and Anthem to really help equip people to do even more and be prepared to keep after these important issues.
Allison, I didn't give your full background, but for those who don't know, you're an educator at heart in various roles throughout your career. I assume part of the thinking here from your perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not only helping the athletes today, but helping them throughout the rest of their lives, even as their careers are over, how they're able to amplify their voice.
That's right. I started off as a first grade school teacher, and I always thought it was, being a teacher and educator, I always thought it was such a privilege that you could have the opportunity to teach. I mean, back in first grade, I was teaching foundational skills that my students would use the rest of their life. They won't remember me when they're 30 and 40, or when their parents teaching their children how to tie shoes and the alphabet. They won't remember me, but they will remember the skills that were taught. And that's why I think being a teacher is such a phenomenal career for that reason. And then I worked at WGU, our state's online nonprofit university, which is all about competency based. So I do think you're right. All of my experiences have built to this moment of saying, how do we equip our athletes with more skills? How do we do it within this competency based approach of just saying, let's add some more competencies through this pilot, because it will serve them for the rest of their career. It's really been great to be a part of.
Well, Allison, a quick aside, don't downgrade the role of the teacher, which I know you weren't, but remembering you as that first grade teacher. In a recent episode, I cited a journalism teacher in high school.
Okay.
Who kind of inspired me and then led to my career. And I mentioned his name, and someone heard it, sent the podcast to him. He gave me a call. I hadn't talked to him in over 40 years.
Oh, isn't that great?
So, and I remembered his name, and then we were able to reconnect. So anyway, back to, you've mentioned Anthem a couple times and part of the partnership, and it really goes beyond this. I know there's some other things, recognizing some of the great initiatives taking place in the public health. What are some things that are planned in that area?
Every year when we recruit players, athletes to the Fever, we sit down, we just say, what are you passionate about? What do you really want? If you could change the world in some area, what would that be? And so for us, we let our athletes drive a little bit of that, or a lot of that focus, and it keeps our activities in the community really vibrant. And marrying it, partnering it with Pacer Sports Entertainment, which, I'm so proud to be a part of our company. Through last summer, we started our Inclusive Action Committee. Really, how do we look at 5 pillars of good things to do in the community? But Tom, specifically, I have now athletes who, a couple of my athletes are so focused on anti-bullying. You can imagine if you're a tall girl who eventually makes it in the WNBA, you were probably a tall girl in grade school, and that wasn't so cool back then.
Back in the awkward stage, yeah.
Yes. So we have some athletes that are really focused on anti-bullying. Tiffany Mitchell really cares about single parents. We're working with Ivy Tech and Sue Ellsperman around some work we could do to really support single parents and the work that they're doing at Ivy Tech in that space. A couple of my players are very committed to the work in the mental health. And that's also a good partnership that we have with Anthem too. Of how do you just continue to build into people's sports? It's such a great platform to build mental health. Basketball is the #1 sport to develop psychological well-being. Basketball, psychological well-being, #1 sport according to research. So you think, how do we use this platform to really develop mental strength for our kids in the community? So you'll see us in those spaces. Lauren Cox, one of our athletes we picked up last season from Baylor, is a type 1 diabetic. So in that health space, that's a focus for us too. So you'll see us put our hand to many, many opportunities in the community. D-Rob, one of our newest veterans that we brought on, really has a heart to do work in the space of homelessness and supporting shelter. So it's very player driven. We think that is such a, it's so aligned, Tom. It's like when you can have a team and they have their own passion that they really want to work toward, and we can come along with our franchise and brand to support that passion, is when it's really authentic.
Allison, I read in a story, I think that your Fever press team put out, some of the comments from the players who participated in the Lily program. And in addition to those individual benefits, they mentioned getting to know their teammates better, and the advantages of that. Talk about that a little bit, how that has impacts probably obviously off the court, but maybe even on the court this season.
I think that's right. In corporate America, we do these offsites, where we get together and we get to know our employees and we start to develop relationships which help us work in a coordinated way back in the office. It's not dissimilar for athletes. You think that they all know each other because they're on the floor competing, but that doesn't mean that they know each other as people and what their passions really are. And I think what we were able to do through this athlete to advocate program is we were able to raise the coordination and collaboration of our athletes that might care about different issues in society, but they're coordinated and aligned on the fact that they care about doing good in the community. And they developed a new respect for each other in that space as they got to know each other. And it was it's wonderful. It's something we will build on. We talk all the time, Tom, about the Fever. We have our 3 C's: commit, compete, and contribute. That will build our championship culture. We'll win a championship. I'm certain of that. What we are currently winning, though, is developing a championship culture, which is exactly what you want out of these wonderful female athletes who are role models to so many. And this commitment our C for commitment means we're committed to being the best people we can be and helping each other to be the best version of themselves too. So this is all playing together in the wonderful pursuit of, this championship culture, and our players really knowing each other and understanding and valuing each other is a key component of that.
Sounds like a winning formula, both on and off the court. Allison, I mentioned in the introduction, this being the 25th season of the WNBA, with the Fever part of that since being founded in 2000. What are some special activities planned around this anniversary season?
We're excited with the WNBA. Our new commissioner, Kathy Engelbert's done just a terrific job, wonderful work in promoting women's sports. We're just announced a new partnership with Google. We have these change maker partners, Google and Deloitte and Nike, and they're coming along and putting their full support behind women's sports, which is terrific. AT&T, another one. So we'll have a new logo. It's the Count It logo that highlights our 25th year. We're launching a new Commissioner's Cup, which will be a side competition within the competition of the season. We'll host the commissioner here in Indiana, which we're looking forward to. So we'll have some activities throughout the season, really highlighting, and some additional activities during the Olympic break this season to highlight the 25th anniversary of the league.
Well, Allison, I won't ask you to kind of break down all the X's and O's on the court, but you have a new coach, coaching veteran, Marianne Stanley. Got a mix of as you mentioned, some veterans, some talented newcomers. We can't talk about the first 2 games, home and home games with the New York Liberty, as they were played after we recorded this, but what are some things fans can expect on the court as this season progresses?
I think, Marianne Stanley is such a terrific head coach and a finalist for the Naismith, which we're excited about for her. She's brought on Jared Simpson and brought back Steve Smith and Vicky Hall. Vicky played at Brebeuf, former Miss Basketball. Marianne surrounded herself with really terrific, smart coaches that will focus on specific elements of the game. I think our fans will see a few things. First, they're going to see a team that just loves competing and they have a good time doing it. You know, the difference, like when you watch people compete, they get paid to compete, but they just they don't maybe love it. Our athletes on the Fever just love it, and they're going to make you want to play basketball too, you know, so that's exciting to see. You're going to watch a fast tempo game. Marianne loves to run a fast game. It's going to be up tempo and exciting and fun to watch. You're going to see a team that's really focused on defense. I think that will be the hallmark. We didn't get there last season. We had too many new players, too many injuries in the bubble. What I've gotten to sit in on a few practices, I think you will see, you know, I think we will be known for our defense. And then I also think people are going to just enjoy the teamwork. And, you know, so this is that championship culture. I don't think you're ever going to come to a Fever game and think there's just one star. You're not going to walk away saying the game's all about that one player. Coach Stanley coaches a team. And I think my expectation is when you come to the Fever game, and we can't wait to see you and all the listeners at our games, you're going to walk away and say that is a fine oiled machine of a team that works together on every play.
Well, Allison, before we started the conversation today, you shared that the number of days since the Fever has played here at home in Indianapolis. And if you can share that number, but just the importance of being back downtown as we look to kind of revitalize, return that vibrancy to downtown, not only in Indianapolis, but our other communities around the state.
Well, it's so good to be back home. It's 616 days since our last Fever regular season game was played. 616 days since.
That's a scary big number, isn't it?
It is a scary big number, but the building looks great, and we have a new locker room, and the facilities are terrific. So it's been worth the wait, but we're glad to be back home.
Allison, you've been part of the Fever, and you said Pacer Sports and Entertainment for a little over 2 years now. What do you enjoy most about this role, about the work that you're doing?
Hey, Tom, the opportunity to really engage in the community and provide opportunities for our athletes to use their platform to do good has been really inspiring. I think the work we do in the community is really what inspires me every day. So I love the game of basketball. I'm born in Indiana. It's what we do. So I love the game. Being in the gym with the athletes is terrific. But anytime you can put your hand to a career where your job is to really support and encourage people like the Fever players and give them a pathway to success, both on the court and in the community, it's really satisfying and fulfilling and just great to be a part of.
Yeah. Allison, I didn't go back and listen to our conversation from 3 years ago and on the podcast, but I'm sure based on our past interactions, I'm confident that you're probably an avid reader when time allows. Can you talk maybe about what you've been able to pick up recently as far as books or have read that you might recommend, or something that kind of inspired you?
I just finished Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0 with Jim Collins. And I couldn't get enough of this part of the book. He talks about successful companies. So of course I think about successful franchise. They have disciplined people with disciplined thought that leads to disciplined action. Disciplined people with disciplined thought that leads to disciplined action. And, I know from my work in studies and leadership, it takes 36 months to change a culture. So Tamika and I are 24 months into really resetting the culture of the Fever by new coaches and new players. And when I was listening to Jim talk about those pieces, I was like, okay, this is why this franchise is really moving in the right direction. We brought in disciplined people. We're all aligned in the way we think about this championship culture. So we have disciplined thought, and it will now this season lead to disciplined action, so that book came at a timely moment for me, and I have really enjoyed it.
You mentioned listening. Just curious, are you more of a reader or a listener of the ebooks?
I am a listener of the ebooks because I spend a lot of time in my car.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be a sit down and read a book person, but I honestly I have a hard time sitting still. So it's hard to move around when you're driving. So that's my time.
That's that boundless energy, I think, that you have. You mentioned the community and certainly the importance of being part of that. Can you talk about just what you're seeing here in Indianapolis again as we work to bounce back to kind of fully recover from the pandemic? Are you encouraged that we're moving in that right direction?
I tell you what encourages me about Indianapolis and our state, but Indianapolis in particular, is I have the good fortune of being friends with people like Jim Morris and Rick Fuson and Teresa Lubbers and the people who worked so hard to put Indianapolis, that list is very long, but they've worked so hard to create a wonderful city in Indianapolis. And they are still hopeful and optimistic about the next phase of Indianapolis. So that gives me hope too. And I think I believe that our city will be great and will rebound in big ways, hosting the NCAA championship. And I mean, all of the games here was a good start for us as a city to remind ourselves how strong we are as a city that works together and rolls our sleeves up and gets the project done. I think our future is very bright.
Yeah, I think that hosting that entire tournament, it certainly sent a message around the country and beyond. But as you mentioned, also an internal boost, just a reminder that we probably were the only city that could pull that off the way we did.
And I think, and rightfully so, we talk a lot about Hoosier hospitality and humility. I also feel, I've been around enough to know that we also take pride in the work we do. And those are not opposites. Humility and pride they're not in conflict there. We take a lot of pride in doing things well in this city. The NCAA was proof of that, but that's why I have optimism and hope about how our city will come back. It might look different, of course, but the character of the people and the focus, it's those three things. We're disciplined people with disciplined thought, which will lead to disciplined action for our city too.
So we got the three C's and the building the culture. We got that discipline that we learned from the book. So keeping those things in mind.
Good.
Allison, as we wrap up this season, we're asking people kind of at the end of the day, what has made it a great day for Allison Barber as you think about your work, as you think about the things you do personally, but before the head hits the pillow, so to speak, what has made it a great day for you?
I tell you why I can answer that is because like probably many of your listeners, I keep a gratitude journal and I jot down the things that, a few things, usually three that I'm really grateful for. And that was there's a book I read about that too. It's such a good one about the gratitude diaries, I think is what that one's called. And, what makes it a great day for me is if I had the opportunity to contribute somewhere, someplace in someone's life and in some mission. And, that's years and years ago, I wrote my eulogy because I read Tuesdays with Morrie and they said, write your eulogy, you'll know how to live. And years before that, I wrote like, what would make life meaningful to me? And it's a one word mission statement for me and it's contribution. So any day that I could call it a day and look back and say, could I put my hand to anything today that made a contribution? Sometimes they're big things, sometimes they're little things, but that's what gives me meaning and value.
Well, where we started this conversation with the partnership and the opportunity for the players and Tamika to take part in that program, that course, and to help change their lives, that is a huge contribution. So for you and many others to be able to put that together. Allison, President and Chief Operating Officer of the Indiana Fever, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. Just a few comments about some of our upcoming episodes. We're so excited as we close in on the end of our fourth season. We'll have upcoming episodes and conversations with Tanya McKenzie of Indiana Black Expo and the outstanding work her organization is doing. We talk with entrepreneur Scott McCorkle, longtime tech industry leader here in Indiana, and some of the great work that's going on. And a special conversation with retiring Indiana University President Michael McRobbie. We had profiled President McRobbie as he took on that role 15 years ago now, I believe in 2006. So we look forward to kind of putting a bow on that and having this conversation with him as he wraps up his career at Indiana University. So you look forward to those conversations coming up during the month of June. As always, thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to the In Chamber.